So to set the mood for the actual talk today, I would like to start with a video. So James, if you are ready with that video.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
So indeed, cyclists are everywhere, and it's a valuable reminder. Cyclists, bicyclists, motorcyclists, everywhere. Watch out for them. How many of you, if any of you, noticed all 21 changes? How many of you noticed any of the 21 changes? Okay. How many of you noticed none of the 21 changes? Yeah. So why? Why did we not notice them? You were listening, and it was a visual cue. Focusing on the people. However, if you noticed, the murder implements changed. So even the people changed. We already established. But yeah, you're focused on the people. What else? What was this? Focused on the task. We were told this is a whodunit. Immediately we start trying to solve for the mystery. And those changes had nothing to do with the mystery.
How'd they hide all the sound?
You know, I had wondered that, and I mean, a lot of the surface was carpeted, but I believe they had all the people moving in were in stocking feet as well, or in slippers. Yeah. So that idea that we're focused on the task, we're focused on the problem before us, and we miss all of these other things. Is it fair to say that is something that goes on in our regular life? Is there anybody that's, no, I never get task-oriented. I always see everything. Okay. So the title of this talk is, You've Got Another Think Coming, right? And when you saw or heard that title, how many of you are like, oh, that's just a lovely play on the phrase, you've got another thing coming? How many of you are aware that the original phrase is, you've got another think coming? Yeah. Its origin is British, where you would sit and have a think, right? It is not uncommon for the British to use think as a noun, but it's actually the second part of a two-part phrase. If you think that, you've got another think coming. So that is the original, to take think and look at it as this noun, not something we do, it's just something we can look at, which personally I find really useful. Because so often, we see our thoughts as defining us. We see our thoughts as us. the way we see our emotions, right? So, I don't know why I'm going to Britain so much today, but like the Irish say, if the Irish are feeling sad, they'll say, a sadness has come upon me, right? Or a sadness has come upon me. That's, but it's not something, they don't say, I am that thing. They don't give that kind of power to it. They just say, it's come upon me, it has visited me. Same thing with our thoughts, right? Thoughts are things. We have a think. Speaking of the phrase, thoughts are things, who's familiar with that phrase? Thoughts are things was a really prominent phrase around the time that The Secret became very popular and we had all of the laws of attraction discussions going on. It's also, those are the first 3 words of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Thoughts are things. Those 3 words are also the title of multiple books, including, we have a New Thought author, Princess Mulford, and then, of course, Bob Proctor, who many of us know as a thought leader as well. So when you hear the phrase, thoughts are things, how does that make you feel, or what do you think of with that phrase? This is participatory, by the way, so it's just saying. You think it, and then you bring it into being, right? You conceive it, you believe it, you achieve it, those kind of things. It can be very empowering, right? It is often viewed that way. Crystal?
I feel more responsible for what I'm thinking.
I like that. Feeling more responsible for what you're thinking. Because again, the thoughts aren't us, so can we at least, if not completely control, can we take stock of them, take responsibility in some way? Yeah.
But also, thoughts are things are, sometimes we throw them away. So the opportunity to dispose of a thought because it's only a thing.
I love that. Yeah. For those that couldn't hear that, the idea that since thoughts are things, they can become disposable, right? If I don't need that thought, I can get rid of it. And we so often don't. We hold on to the thoughts that really don't serve us. Curious, how many thoughts do you think we have in a day? I said, who knows? Did anybody want to hazard a guess? Those are the upper estimates, right? The lower estimate done, and this was from a study at Queen's University in Canada, suggests around 6,000 to 6,200, but depending upon how you define a thought, then yes, up into 10 times that, right? But at least 6,000 independent thoughts a day, yes. Right. But again, then, when does it become a separate thought, or am I just revisiting the thing I was thinking about a minute ago? Or is it, that's all that. Yeah, Sharon. Yeah. So when you have a thought, like you're saying this, here's my thought. Here's the thing when it comes to you. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So being thankful for that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So I was reading from a site, as I am wont to do, called Very Big Brain. And they had gone over this concept of how many thoughts we have in a day. And again, that range, generally 6 to 60,000 or more, depending upon the person. And they talked about how like roughly 90% of our thoughts are repetitive, day to day. We're rehashing the same things. They went through some types. One, the basic repetitive thoughts, the same mental loops that we're always going to go back to that, right? Whether it's our anxiety, whether it's unfinished business. There are the automatic thoughts that we may have. You're driving and that car's too slow, right? You're getting in line, that line's too long. They're not deep thought. They're just these things that automatically hit us. We have our reactive thoughts that, again, will hit sometimes constantly. Just our emotional reaction to things repeated. And then there are thoughts more like the creative thoughts. They're less repeated. The idea generation, the problem solving, even daydreaming. And then we get into critical thoughts. Not meaning like critical like putting you down, but critical as in analysis and being able to really look, make decisions, internal debates, all of that. So when we have roughly 90% of our thoughts being those repetitive loops. Yes, Kent?
Where's the negative echo might come into this? When you say one thing and your negative echo comes in and says, oh yeah, sure. I'm going to win the lottery today, and the negative thought or the negative echo would be, oh sure you are. That's
Absolutely. So, again, for those that may not have heard what Kent said, but the negative echo, when you have a positive thought, there's often a negative that comes in to undermine it. And that falls right into the repetitive and the loops and the anxieties, right? Absolutely. So one of the big steps is being more mindful of what we're thinking, which is what Crystal was talking about, that being aware of it, taking responsibility for seeing it. I don't have to say that thought is me, bless you, but I should say, I see the thought I'm having. Right? Do we feel the difference there? Not I am this, or this is in my center. It's just I see the thought that I'm having. Once you see it, you get some choices about what to do with it, right? I loved that same site, the Very Big Brain, talked about people who engage in regular practices like mindfulness and journaling and cognitive behavioral therapy tend to have better emotional regulation. And they have clearer decision-making and better focus. Just from journaling, just from having mindfulness, being aware in the moment. All of those things can make the other aspects of our mindful work easier. And why? Because we're sifting through the noise, right? We're sifting through all of those repetitive things and going, oh, I see what that is. Oh, but here's this lovely thought. That 1 out of 10 thoughts where it's like, oh no, this is creative, this is lovely, this is inspiring. But if I'm mired down in the other 9 out of the 10, I don't appreciate that. I am not thankful for the thought that I have. There's an acronym, and you should have had an insert in your bulletins or gotten a separate page. It's a two-sided. One side is the THINK acronym, the other is 4 questions and a little bit more from Byron Katie. So starting with the THINK acronym, this is originally created by Alan Redpath. At least that seems to be the creator. I couldn't find anybody earlier than Alan that used this. But THINK. And we often use this in communicating with others. So I want to go through it first, and then I want to talk about it a little bit. So step 1, the T, is it true? If you're going to be criticizing somebody, if you're going to be helpful to them, is what you are saying true? Number 2, is it helpful? I have had people in my life who, whether they're talking to me or somebody else, will sometimes be brutally honest. They will say things that often sound hurtful, and then what they say is, I'm just being honest. Exactly. You're only being honest. You're not being kind. You're not being helpful. You are just being honest. So if you ever hear yourself saying, I'm just being honest, think back to this. So is it true? Is it helpful? Third one, a little tougher. Is it inspiring? Does it motivate? Right? Not beat down. Does it uplift and motivate? Is it inspiring? 4, is it necessary? Not all that long ago, I was working on a theatrical production as a director, and I had an assistant director. Sweet person, talented person, but sometimes their opinions became expressed in ways that were not always helpful. And we had somebody who was substituting in a role one night, not on stage, but in a role that affected the show. And they were filling in for 2 performances. And after the second performance, that assistant went to them and told them all the things they had done wrong. That person who had been subbing in was understandably not pleased. And when I talked to the assistant about it later, I said, so you do understand they had already fulfilled their role as a volunteer filling in for 2 performances, right? Yes. So what was the benefit of telling them what they did wrong at that point when they can't correct it? They had no answer. Because I know if I'm doing that, that's for my ego. That's for me to say, I can see the things you did wrong. It in no way benefited the other person or the production, right? So is it necessary, or is it just something you want to tell somebody? And lastly, and hugely, is it kind? And sometimes we have to say things to people that may not be wonderful. I've had performers that I have to address and say, you have body odor, right? So you think of the kindest way that you can say that. It's like, are there medical issues? Are there things, are there issues with laundry? Do you have enough means to take care of things? It was necessary to address, but can we at least do it kindly? So I love this acronym. I've loved it for years. Who else was already familiar with this acronym? I assume there are several. Okay, good. I also want us to think about turning that around. When you're wanting to tell yourself, when you're wanting to criticize yourself, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Are you being kind to yourself? Are you giving yourself the same grace you would give somebody else? Which takes us to the other side of that page, because that very first question of Byron Katie, same exact question. Is it true? And this is intended more for internal work, but I also want us to think about turning that around to look at other people. So step 1, when you are telling yourself something or you're telling other people something, is it true? And I love hearing examples from people who have done the work. And they'll be talking about clients or friends that they've worked with this, and the person's always like, well, yeah, oh, absolutely. If they would just apologize, things would be better. Step 2, can you absolutely know that it's true, your thought, that if they apologize, that'll make things better? It's like, well, no, because it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know 100%. Right, you don't know. You like to believe. The third one, is it true? How do you know that it's true? Forgive me, I know these. How do you react when you believe that thought? So what happens to you? What happens to your mind? What happens to your body when you believe that thought about yourself or about somebody else? And the last one, and I will say, I have no idea why the number 4 on this one is black and not blue like everything else. I tried 5 times to change that color, and it would always shift back to black. So it's like I don't want to start over. It'll be black. But who would you be without that thought? If you're carrying a thought about yourself or about somebody else, who would you be without that thought? And then the last part, now turn the thought around. And that's the really challenging part. Sometimes just getting creative about how to do it. But the thing like, well, they really owe me an apology. Turn it around. I really owe them an apology. Do you? Maybe, right? I love there was an example I was reading of somebody's conversation about, well, they just don't understand me. Turn it around. I just don't understand them. Right? So how do you flip that around and look at it from underneath, from the backside, from all the different angles? And there should be more of these than we had people here today, too, because I want to keep these around just as a general tool for a while. But all of those tools, all of those ways of looking at our thoughts, looking at the things we carry, especially when they are repetitive, especially when I'm holding something and it weighs on me, and for me, it tends to sit in my gut. And if it's getting really stressful, it's just right in my throat. My center of power, right? That's where it really sits when it's really getting to me. There's a phrase that most of us in this room know. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. If you are not familiar with that, you should get familiar with it. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. The things that you hold on to breed in your mind, in your body, and in your own way you attract them because you see them. We're mostly familiar with experiments like, if you think of a green car all day, all you're going to see is green cars, or you're going to see a bunch of them, or more than you would have noticed, right? Whereas if before the whodunit, you'd been told, everything changes, watch for all the changes, you would have noticed a lot more, as opposed to, I'm trying to figure out who killed the man. Even though the body changed, and I think it was a different man by the end, I want to know. So, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. I want you to say that with me. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So, we need to make a regular focus of being aware of what our focus is. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, had a book, Dynamics for Living, and in chapter 6, which was all on thinking, some of the things he said. Humanity is given, and by the way, this is slightly reworded. I condensed some stuff down, so it's not verbatim, but it is the ideas. Humanity is given the highest power in the universe, the power of conscious thoughts. When we use our thoughts in cooperation with principle, with the divine, we are in our power. Thinking is how we formulate. Thinking is active and zealous and impulsive, but not always wise. Yet, it is through thinking that we establish our consciousness and build our world, which is unity principle number 3, right? Our perceptions, our thoughts create the experience that we live. And of course, a thought is a mental vibration or an impulse. And we, the thinkers who think the thought, make those thoughts into living entities. Thought vibrations are sent out by the power of thought, which moves within that idea and gives it an expression of the idea. The omnipresent, invisible substance, the field of pure potentiality, is ready to take form in accordance with our mental patterns. So, what does it look like when we're going through a really challenging period? There's an article in the newest issue of Unity's publication, Spirituality and Health. Who here subscribes to Spirituality and Health? I'm doing all the questions today, sorry. If you're not aware of it, it's a great resource. Lovely articles, lots of insight. Actually, we should look into getting some here. Anyway, that's a side thought. So there's a story in here. It's written by Jennifer Bryant. She's an author and a podcast host, and she also is a holistic practitioner. But she had an article called Thriving in Uncertainty, Seeing Magic and Miracles in Mayhem. So this was from a couple of years ago. Her experience was she lived in Beach Mountain, North Carolina, and Hurricane Helene was coming through. So she was thinking, it's a hurricane, it'll be a storm, I'm gonna go to work as normal. But when she got close to the time to go to work, she was looking outside, out the window, and she saw trees bent almost to the ground. And so she realized she was not going anywhere. She kind of hunkered down, and then the real storm came, and the tornado, and a tree fell on her house, and water started coming in from the rain, and she was trying to keep her 4 cats and 2 dogs calm. She was doing okay herself, trying to keep them calm. And then she saw on her front screen door a squirrel hanging on. The squirrel, by the way, was not scared. The squirrel was just as happy as it could be hanging there on her screen door. She knew the squirrel because she fed squirrels and deer every day. She fed them in the morning and she fed them in the evening by hand. And she's like, it's Nutty, because Nutty loved nuts, would just like always get nuts. So here's Nutty hanging on the screen. She's like, I want nuts. So she's like, and as she's looking at this, this voice, this idea came to her. If a tiny little squirrel can be so carefree, brave, and happy, then so should you. And she was just like, right. She went and got a bunch of nuts, gave Nutty all the nuts that Nutty wanted. By the time the storm was over and she could make it back outside, she had to navigate getting past fallen trees. She realized not one, 3 trees had fallen on her home. Trees had fallen around the house and her car that also oddly protected it from the other debris and wind once they had fallen. She eventually had to move out. I mean, there was no power for a while, but also the repairs were being very slow in being made, and there were mold issues. So she ended up in a hotel or a motel that had become a place where all of these unhoused people ended up. And she got to meet wonderful people, make new friends. She had all these acts of generosity. People brought meals and brought them things. And she said it was wonderful until then you started getting the downside, and people started getting blaming about, oh, the storm, oh, you know, that was because God was getting back at us for evil acts, or it was the devil, or it was the government. The government had caused this. And so what she did, the storm had happened in September, by the way, and this was by Christmas time. She was still in that shelter. So she wrote a letter and gave it to everybody who was at that motel sheltering. And in it, this is what she said. This is how the Creator's presence illuminated magic and miracles amidst the mayhem. Mayhem damaged my home, yet the divine presence revealed unknown hazards that were causing me illness. Mayhem forced me to live at a hotel for months, yet the divine presence eliminated my useless to-do list, giving me the opportunity to establish new, loving relationships. Mayhem destroyed my personal property, yet the divine presence cleansed me of old, worn items that hindered my energy, allowing me the opportunity to receive new energy. Mayhem damaged my car, yet the divine presence protected me from driving it through the dangerous aftermath conditions because I would have. Mayhem stopped me from working and receiving income, yet the divine presence provided me with value through self-reliance and kind, generous people. Mayhem barricaded me in, yet the divine presence grounded me, forcing me to sit, be still, and focus on Creator and my soul. Mayhem manufactured widespread homelessness, yet the divine presence empowered humanitarians to perform great deeds to help us restore ourselves. Mayhem brought death in various ways, yet the divine presence brought us all home to heaven in some way, reminding us to honor all life, for it is short. Mayhem and the divine presence were not entirely separate things. Together they cleansed and replenished environments, providing new nutrients, landscapes, housing, and lifestyles for humans, nature, and wildlife. Together, they reconnected us with our inner selves, making us recognize our monotonous routines, ego mentality, and false ideas of security. Together, they brought tears to our eyes and brought us to our knees in prayer so that we might recognize the divine presence in all our moments. That's how awareness of our thoughts shows up in our dark times. That's an example of how we can see what we are going through, see what we are thinking, and find ways to redirect, to find the gratitude in just having the thought, to find those moments of awareness and responsibility, all of that. I'm getting close to the end of the talk for those of you that are shifting in your seat. We're almost done. But I do want to, I want to recognize that it can be really difficult in these times when there are wars and rumors of wars, and there are killings, and there are displaced people, and we see all of these shifts. Same kind of shifts from a very different source that Jennifer witnessed, right? Displacement, loss of income, loss of life, all of these things. And we can see them on a global scale, and it can be really difficult, really challenging. So when it seems that way, I want you to think about this last part I'm getting to. This is from Eric Butterworth, well-known Unity author and minister, in his book, Spiritual Economics. He said, "One may want, even need, to be informed. Just keep in mind that what you are seeing is the appearance of things. You have the right, perhaps the responsibility, to put your own stamp of God consciousness upon everything you see and hear. The important truth is that if you are manipulated by the news, then you become a part of the world's problems. But if you look out the window of truth and project a fountain of light and love, then you are a part of the solution. You become a peacemaker and a prosperity shaper." So remember, the love of God lives in you. God's love expresses through you. And you are the love of God. And so it is. Amen, Amin, Aho, Ashe, Namaste.